Had a little listen to his podcast, huh?
Dude, it's educational. And besides, I've been wanting to listen to this one.
Welcome to Idling in the Impala, a podcast by and for lovers of supernatural and the fan fiction it inspires. I'm Karlee.
I'm Sandra, and my fangirling cannot be contained because we got MJ back on for a chat. So if this is your first time listening to this podcast, hi, and where have you been? Because if you've been with us since the beginning, you know that MJ, known as Incog Ninja on AO3 and Thoughts Like a Minefield on Tumblr, is one of the main reasons I am even here right now doing this thing. She's an amazing writer, a reader insert in OFC fiction of the Dean-centric variety. If you haven't listened to the interview we had with her back in July of 2022, we'll drop a link to the episode in the description so you can get caught up. So big thanks for joining us and welcome back again to the podcast, MJ. I am so grateful you took the time, especially after all you had to do today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I love talking to you.
Yeah. We've, so I had to look back and see when we last had you on. It was literally like, I was like, oh my God, it's been over a year. Yeah,
it's been a minute.
Yeah. What's kind of been happening in the fanfic realm for you since like July of 2022? I feel like with the pond, SPN FanFic Pond, were you already like a manta ray back then and then became an admin around that time? Or like, what was the deal there, if you can remember? Because I'm asking you to pull back about a year and some change.
Yeah. So I was originally, I was what before the manta ray was called a big fish. And that was back in like 2020, 2021, kind of back in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stepped down for a little bit and then came back as a manta ray. And then pretty like within probably about 6 months or so, I think it was, that I stepped up to admin because, you know, there's just so much to do. And I love being able to, you know, support and give, you know, leadership and give some guidance to, you know, fandom spaces. So, so yeah, that's happened since we last spoke.
Yeah.
Which is real cool.
You running like a lot of those writing sprints and stuff. It's been fun for me to like, and I won a couple, so I was able to like, you know, get some prizes, I was really amazed. And Michelle does so much and is so great, and all of the manta rays and admins are so helpful. Getting the exposure, I think, through the pond, having some stories that, you know, I just, you know, haven't had anybody get the chance to read, or, you know, just haven't met that audience yet, to have that push and that sort of like spotlight is just, it just makes you feel so good to get the responses back and to be like, you know, hear what people have to say about your writing. It's just such a lovely, it's so very different than a lot of the fandom I think that we experience, I think, in a lot of social media avenues, that it's just nice to see everybody be so supportive and welcoming. And I've loved, since like, you know, having Michelle on, I think it was the beginning of this year, just to talk about the pond, then to be like, you know, hey, do you think somebody might want, you know, me to narrate their stuff? And I was like, nobody's going to want that. People want that. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So it's like, you know, having that spot to kind of like be a part of it in a way has been so great. And then I got to meet Michelle, even if it was only for 5 minutes in a bathroom at DC Con. That was just so great too. Karlee, did you know? I'm so jealous. Did you know there was a chance that MJ and I were going to actually meet at the DC Con? Did I mention that was a possibility?
Maybe.
Yeah. We were trying to make it happen, but unfortunately it didn't.
Like I said earlier, my niece lives out there and she just had a baby this summer. And so I wanted to see him. And I don't know if I told you, Sandra, like I started not feeling great. I was like, you know, the baby was only 2 months old. I'm like, I can't, you know, if I have even like a sniffle and I don't know what it is, I'm not going to get on a plane and fly out there, you know?
Yeah. You made the good call. It was a tough call though.
I know.
Cause I was like, so MJ, bummed. you can come with me and do a photo with Judson. I was just like, yes.
and then Karlee, when I looked up to get in Sandra's section, there was one seat down from her. that was open.
Mhm.
It was like,
Oh,
Yeah.
that sucks.
this is
Yeah.
like destiny. You're like, this is destiny, right? And then I was
Yeah.
like, the next, like within hours, I started feeling like crap. And so I was like, oh, fuck, I can't do it. You know, like I just,
But you know what? It's made me realize too is that how very big we think the world is when it comes to community like this, like the chances of life intersecting. I think it's a lot. It can happen a lot easier than I think we give ourselves credit for. Like I know Karlee and I've got this thing where I think we're hoping 2025 to make something happen where like, you know, we get to a con, even if it's me going over there or them coming over here and just like, you know, experiencing something like that together, you know, something we want to do. And but it was no, I remember, I think it was one of the mornings too, MJ, you and I were just like chatting like on Discord about like, you know, the day and like getting to, you know, like the stuff I was able to do. And my husband sort of like his back was causing issues. So he was going to be out of commission for a bit. But like all the stuff that I think for somebody who's not I've never been very adventurous in life. I've always been I've held myself back a lot for a lot of reasons. You know, mental health's never the greatest. And it just sometimes just makes you feel like you aren't good enough, or there's reasons why you shouldn't be doing the things that aren't that difficult to do in hindsight, but your brain makes you think it's not. So to get to do these different kinds of things, like to do the podcast, to go to the conventions, I was saying to Karlee that my husband's like, you get this con like persona, like, you know, you just turn into this other person. And I think it's because you just feel comfortable being around people that love something, maybe different parts of the fandom, but they love the fandom as much as you do, you know? And so it's like this community and it's like this physical representation of it. And it just makes you kind of feel like you can kind of do anything, you know? And it's just, it was very, it's been a journey. I have to say, I think Supernatural's had a lot to do with my growth in a way, which is weird to say about a show, but I really feel like it's done.
It's weird.
But it feels weird.
I don't think that's weird.
You know, but sometimes it feels weird to say, especially, you know, being older and kind of like feeling like, why should I have my shit together by now? And it's like, but no, nobody
has their shit together.
Yeah,
but that's bullshit.
But that's
made of lies.
But that's the lies that we're told, and that we should, you know, kind of have ourselves together and fit into this little mold. So I'm glad that it gives us this opportunity to meet, you know, all these different people, all walks of life that love the same thing. And again, I'm still so like, I still get so excited when I get to talk to you because I'm like, oh my God, this is the person that's read, you know, he's written so many things that I absolutely love and adore, you know, about Dean as a character too, you know, so it's just, I just truly appreciate that you've done, I think you've done a lot, you know, for fan fiction of the Dean variety as a whole. And I think you should get a little plaque. If I could make you a plaque, I would make you a plaque.
Make her a table. Make her
a table. She'll love a table.
I like tables.
I don't know if it's a table you're thinking about, MJ.
No, like a table in a document. Sandra loves a table in a document.
Oh God,
I love tables and documents.
Okay, all right.
Great.
Well, I will make a special MJ table. I just have to figure out what that's going to be about. But yeah,
I do love it. Just have to figure out what that means. Yeah, I mean, I love spreadsheets. Everybody loves a good spreadsheet, I think.
Karlee too.
Not around my people.
Embrace spreadsheets a little bit more, though. I think a little bit.
I can't. I work with spreadsheets every day at work, and the amount of people that don't know how to use a fucking spreadsheet.
True. That's the problem. It's not the spreadsheet. It's not the spreadsheet. It's the
fucking people. Yeah, that'll do it. It's not the spreadsheet. It's the people.
That'll absolutely do it. MJ, you were going to come on with Michelle. Hopefully we have Michelle back on another time. So we're going to talk more fanfic pond stuff, but you know, hopefully we get to do that another time and other things. But I'd mentioned to you the topic of sexual agency and sort of fan fiction and what that's maybe done for people who've started writing fanfic, or like the journey of being able to identify what it is that you like in all sorts of ways, like sexually, but also like behavior and going outside of the norm or what's accepted or what's, and I use the term, but like the patriarchal sort of like society and stuff like that, and how it, I think for a lot of marginalized groups, just buries what we should be able to experience and feel free experiencing in a lot of ways sexually. But a lot of the research I was reading about was kind of focusing on younger people. And I know that for a lot of people, we start out younger, but I'm also coming from a situation where I read and wrote fanfic when I was younger, but I kind of feel like now I'm getting a different experience and sort of like, I don't know, not a midlife crisis with it, but sort of like, just like an involvement with how it's affected me and my agency and stuff. I don't know if any of this makes sense.
I mean, it more than makes sense. I think this is a conversation that I've had in a lot of different ways throughout the years of writing fan fiction in different fandoms that I've been in. And I think one of the first things that is important to note is when I noticed this probably more in the Twilight fandom than I have in any other fandom. I don't notice it as much in supernatural fandom, and I don't know why that is, and maybe we can dig into that a little bit. But I think there's always kind of like it's like popular media, where there are always these waves of and trends. So it's like for a while it was like, YA books were like vampires, and then and it was werewolves, and it was whatever, right? So it's like there's always like some sort of trend happening. And in fan fiction, you'll see in Twilight it was like waves of, there was BDSM, and then there was butt sex, and it was like that's how we would talk about it. It was like this joke of being like, God, everyone's writing butt sex these days. What's that about? Regardless of your age, I think there's always room to grow and learn new things about yourself, especially with relation to sexuality, because our bodies change chemically. As a 50-something-year-old woman who's premenopausal, I can definitely vouch for the fact that things have changed for me. And I think we talked about this a little bit on our first conversation. Was kind of like, I always joke about how having my uterus removed changed, because I still have my ovaries, but I had my uterus removed, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, Dean Winchester's amazing. I'd been watching the show for 2 years before that, but boy, I was in my recovery from having my uterus removed, and I was like, holy shit, what's going on? So I mean, that's a joke, but I'm just saying, our hormones and our chemical makeup in our bodies change so frequently that I think there's always going to be room for finding out what turns us on, and what, whether that's your brain or your body, what things are sexy, what things get you off, all those things change so much. Was sexually active in my late teens, and pretty much always had a consistent sexual partner, or the ability to have one. And I had a lot of sexual experience before I really started becoming engaged in fandoms. And so I could easily try to claim that I had this, that I already had developed my sexual agency, which I think it's ever changing. So, I learned a lot from writing fanfic and reading it. And, but I was also, I think the more important thing for me was I was able to define some things. Whereas before it was just like, I like this thing, but I don't really understand why or what it means.
Right.
And so it was, connecting that to relationships, and connecting it to, my mental health and my fulfillment and happiness, came from reading and writing fan fiction.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to shoot down what you're saying or anything, because I could definitely see that when I looked at the links, it was a lot of it was focused on younger people. But I think that's just because it's easy. It's easy just to be like, in your developmental stages of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I really think that there's just so many different stages of sexual agency and development, that it doesn't really matter, So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of the problem too. And I think that's just like society, just like, there's this expectation that you hit this point and, this is when all these things are supposed to happen. And it's not linear, for everybody.
right.
It's very different. I waited a long time to, do anything sexual. So my experience is kind of like later, and for whatever reason, many reasons, I decided not to. And then I think too, a lot of it becomes you're doing what you think's expected of you. And, and I mean, society kind of gives you the assumption that, you do things a certain way. And again, I was interested, but I didn't know. And then I sort of like got a lot of that information through, let's face it, like pornography is not necessarily, it does the job, but I think the thing that fan fiction does for me and a lot of other people is it makes this emotional connection that makes
Yeah.
it just very different and very special. You dig into the characters and, we talk a
It's
lot
so
about,
much more engaging.
yeah,
It's
because
so
you've
much more
got,
engaging, but also it's, like, and what that was the piece that was sort of missing for me, because
Mhm.
being somebody who is, honestly, I've, realized in later life, hypersexual, that I, would try and do things, and I would try to spread anything and I do all these things, but I didn't understand like the emotional implications until much later in my life. And I would say I was probably in my 30s. And my husband and I got married when I was 32, and I was well into my I was probably in my mid to late 30s when I started really understanding how that emotionally affected me. And so when, whether people are literally talking it out in fic or whether you're just watching it happen and unfold, it's a very different experience than just watching porn or even doing it yourself, because sometimes that connection's just not made. So, reading it in more often fic than, even like romance novels, much more often fic is just so much more of a full experience, of that emotional and mental aspect.
I was reading a little something in one of the articles where it was talking about, there was actually one of them, I can't remember which one it is, but they go into a lot of detail about supernatural in one of these articles that I have. And they actually made a point of like noting like Dean Winchester, how it's like, they take a character that's not very likable or maybe mistreats, doesn't maybe treat women the way he should treat women. And I was just like, who's reading that art? Like who's put this article together? Because it's like, are we projecting a
We're
lot
looking
of
at the
things?
same Dean.
Yeah. Are we projecting a lot of things on? And I think we do to some extent, like as part of writing, like sometimes we project issues, situations, things we're trying to work through onto our characters. But there was this immediate, like, oh, he's like, he's just a cavalier kind of dude. And I'm like, no, that's not the character,
No.
that I've experienced. And I think what's beautiful about fan fiction is how a lot of authors take that and just delve into it even more with Dean and with Sam, and all of the different nuances that they have, and make them, whether it's Dean with Reader or a Wincest fic or a Destiel or any of those things, like the way they take the characters and expound on them and get into their thought process makes it all just more like, yes, I want to do all of these things with this character. Like it's that kind of a situation, it makes you feel, I think safe is the word. And I've used that a lot too with Dina sort of being like a playmate and being the safe person that you can experience these things with.
Experiment with,
it's very contained,
for sure.
And it's safe. And it's it's where your mind can go to explore things that you, quite frankly, I will never do in real life, right? Like I just won't. Like it's just not me.
Yeah.
But I can, but I can read it in fiction and I can see what the experience might be like. And sometimes some things might be things that I might try, and that's okay. And it's kind of safer. Karlee, you come from a much younger, you come from a little bit of a younger generation.
I feel very attacked right now. What?
But well, you're younger than both MJ
yeah.
and I. So I don't know if your like experience with fanfic and kind of getting into it and just like sexual agency, how like that experience has kind of like been and developed for you? I'm putting you on the spot.
Cheers. Thanks. You come at me with no fucking notes and then start asking incredible questions.
But I know you can do great things with the question. So I have faith in you.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know if my experience is indicative of my generation, but I sort of found fanfic as I don't know, like a mid-teen, an early teen, like 14-ish. So a lot of my sexual, I don't want to say awakening, that's gross. Ick. But like that came into my life around the time that you do start sort of exploring sexuality and figuring things out and trying things out, and just that sort of world that opens up to you. So I don't know if that is indicative of all of my generation, but it certainly was for me. It probably, I mean, I can't say for certain, but it probably did shape sort of the way that I viewed sex and intimacy and things like that as a teen, and for better or worse, I guess. But it was, I don't know, it was just because I mean, like, porn was kind of just, it wasn't as difficult to access as it used to be, but it still wasn't easy to access for my age. So, you've got this fanfic and you can just say, oh, I'm reading. No one's going to question, oh, what are you reading? You don't need to know. I'm reading. And I was a voracious reader anyway. So nobody questioned me having my nose in a computer screen reading or anything like that. But yeah, it was just easy to access, and you could, you didn't, although you had to hide it, you didn't have to hide it in the same way. And then I started writing around that same time. So while the stories are not stories I would go back and read with any, oh God, I'd cringe myself out of existence. But certainly, just having access to that world was very much shaped my sort of development in that area. And then coming back to it again in my 30s. Oh, so old. Coming back to it again in my 30s, obviously much more confident in myself, who I am. I know what I like, I know what I want. It's been really freeing to be able to explore some of the things that are just not quite practical in real life. When you have like a house and kids and you have to do the laundry. No one's going to come and do it for you. All that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's weird to think that it's been with me through, a lot of my formative, a lot of sort of crucial points in my life. When it comes to that side of things. Yeah. Like, I know for me, I think it's just a matter of, because I remember like, finding the romance novels and stuff when I was younger, and kind of like, my mom who does not, she's from Italy. So like, as long as I was reading, she didn't care what I was reading. Well, like, that was kind of how I sort of like, got the, oh, that's what this is. Oh, what's that? Like, I always think it's funny to like, think about a kid reading something and not quite knowing, and then going back to that same thing and reading it again and going, oh my gosh, like, I had no idea what this meant back then. And I had to really investigate a lot more. What do you think because I'm always like, people get really like up in arms about like a kid reading fan fiction and kind of putting it in the same category as, say, like coming across pornography, or like how similar are they? Is there a difference in, to me, there's an inherent difference in fan fiction than there is in like, what I could have come across like with a VHS tape, that somebody had hidden under hidden under their bed, then coming named
across
Super Bowl 98.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Like, I just don't see it as, I see it as very different, because I think there's an exploration there that it can be a lot of stuff just thrown at a kid. But that you could say that for any age, and you'd have to kind of still research it, find out more about it and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think it's just a question out there, like, and again, Karlee, you being a parent,
Yeah, I was going to say, were you throwing that at me?
I was kind of throwing it at you, like parent wise. Like, what do you think?
Cool. Cool. Thanks. Yeah. So I've talked about before that I have a preteen, and I have, well, he's not a baby, but he's 5.
Mhm.
So we won't talk about the 5-year-old because he's a baby muffin. But I would, oh God, I would rather my eldest read fanfic of any variety, even the darker stuff. I would rather them read that and have to go and look things up for themselves than watch mainstream pornography every single day of the week and twice on Sundays, because there is nuance in words that, you know, can portray so many things, but also, and this is very contrary to who I am as an author and what I want my writing to portray, but there is a distance emotionally with words that I think is beneficial in this way. Mainstream pornography is just, and I fully hold my hands up as someone who watches porn, so I'm the biggest fucking hypocrite on the planet, but it's disgusting. It's so gross, like so gross, you know. And I don't mean that in like a prudish way. I mean like the message that it sends to kids, you know, impressionable children, is so misogynistic and sexist and disgusting that I would rather, if my child has to learn about sex in any way, which I would rather they didn't, because they are my child, and I would rather not, you know, ever. But if they have to, I would rather it be something that they read, like fan fiction, than something visual that they can access, because there is a disconnect between words. You can visualize something, but it's not the same as someone making the image for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's always going to be a disconnect. So I feel like it's maybe a gentler approach into the subject than, you know, my child is going to turn 12 in just over a month, and they have a phone, they have a laptop, the internet is out there. The things that they can see is just mind-blowing, and as a parent, that's real fucking scary to know what's out there, know what they can find, know the conversations that you're going to have, know the lessons that kind of media is going to teach them that I'm going to have to unteach. And I just think fanfic is, I mean, it's never going to be mainstream. It's never going to be, you know, but I would infinitely rather catch my kid with their nose in a smutty book, or, you know, catch AO3 on the laptop, than find them on Pornhub, frankly. That's just, think about that. My babe.
MJ, you said you'd had like a couple conversations too about, like, with different writers and I'm assuming like readers of fanfic too, like over the years, and like the whole topic of like sexual agency and stuff. And I mean, are there certain things you could share or like express that you were maybe not surprised about, but just like, yeah, I can relate to that, or that's something that somebody else is kind of like pulling out of fan fiction too, like along their journey?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things that is kind of a common theme across all of the conversations I've had is that, and I think I've already mentioned that it's showing you the emotional side and the processing of some of these things. And so also just presenting it in a more intimate way. And a lot of times with discussion surrounding that. So, you know, the characters are a lot of times either, you know, you're reading through as they process it through in their own minds, or you read as they have a conversation with their partner. And so, you know, that's always for me personally, that was something that was kind of an aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, oh, there's actual discussion around this. This is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think too that, I've known people who have processed sexual trauma through fan fiction, whether reading it or writing it, and being able to have those conversations. And and then having other people reply, to that, that piece of fiction saying, this helped me, I had this experience. And so, watching this character process this was incredibly helpful to me. It kind of breaks the ice for some people too. There's like a lot of people think that some things might be taboo.
Yeah.
But it's something that's kind of exciting to them. And they don't want to try it. And they certainly don't want to pick up Pornhub and watch it. That freaks them out. But it's a little bit of a softer approach if you get this, if you can kind of just take a peek at it on AO3, it's like,
yeah, that's similar to what I was saying. There's like
exactly
a bit of it, just a little bit of a disconnect, which as an author, I'm sure you'll agree, MJ, that's not what you want. You want to be like right up there with your reader. But then when you're looking at it differently, you're like, oh yeah, no, that is actually helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that I don't want to go too off topic because one person in particular was pointing out about how I'm trying to figure out how to say this without it sounding.
We can censor if
because
you
I'm not trying to like project myself onto it, because when she said this, I was like, holy shit. Yeah. This, somebody read a fic that she had written that was fully consensual. But there was kind of like this fantasy aspect to it. Like, and it was not really a fantasy necessarily, but it was definitely, a role playing kind of thing. Right. And so there was somebody who read it, one of their readers, who replied back and started recommending all of these stories that they thought that the writer would enjoy, that were not play, were not, and it was kind of that sense of, where is our agency as writers, and kind of on that same vein as, what am I portraying when I put this out here? Because I think I'm exploring this, or I think I'm presenting this. And it's happened to me. I mean, it's happened to me that, our readers will come back and be like, I think I've written something that was very deep and dark and explored this kind of thing in my brain that, yes, is connected to sex, but I don't expect people to then just come back and go, oh my God, that was so hot, and it just feels like something was taken, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know how else to say that, but that's in reference to kind of the writer's agency. Like, sometimes we open ourselves up so much as writers to explore something that's so personal. That's definitely something that we as writers sometimes are kind of very connected to what it is that we write, whether it's sexual or emotional. And when it isn't received the way we presented it, and then sometimes it's conflated. I mean, and that is even worse, and it feels like something's taken from you,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. And it's just, so that was kind of a really tangential piece that's me and a couple of other writers went off on a few days ago. But I think one of your questions was the agency of the writer. It does help us develop ideas, just like any other idea, but it does help us develop that sexual agency. I think, talking about things and exploring it further. I know that I've heard that from so many people who are like, I never even thought I would like this. And then I got it. It was a King Bingo square, and I wrote about it. And then I was like, oh my God, I like this. Like, I never even thought about it before, but then I wrote about it, and it was, it just really opened up this whole other piece. So I think that's, an important part of the exploration as a writer, and certainly as readers, I think it's the same thing.
I think it's interesting too, like how much Sam and Dean, I think, help that. I know, like, Karlee's talked about it and I've talked about it with both, like what you realize you like I said, if unless you were ever given like a prompt, like I've got a couple prompts for a bingo that I'm going to try, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to give this a try and see, like, not, and it's not even that they're kinky. It's just like, it's something different outside of, something I would never even think about, like trying to write about. And then you get the opportunity to explore that, whether it's, just a theme or just a setting or a location or a kink, that,
Yeah.
Dean's brought about all sorts of kinks I didn't know I had, because I spend so much time thinking about the character too. And every part of him feels important and special and exciting and all of those things. And so then I want to explore them. So I'm doing, these like stories with a character that, I didn't think I would ever even want to like think about and do and research and stuff. And then you're like, oh yeah, this would be fun. And so then, hey hun. Hey, hun.
Absolutely. I think
I think that
another
helps
thing
too. Yeah.
That's another thing, like toys. I mean, so many people. I actually have had more than one person come to me and say I saved their marriage with their fan fiction.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
Yeah. And I said that to my husband once, and he goes, I think it probably saved our marriage. I mean, I think he's being very, I think he was being very, that was a little much for him to say it quite like that. But for sure, I said this when we first started, that I learned a lot more about intimacy and my understanding of that, my connection to it through reading and through writing. And so, but I think, just talking casually with people is like, so many people who are like, I would never have as many sex toys as I have, and my husband is totally okay with it and down with it and supports it. Like, I wouldn't even know how to talk about this if I didn't have fan fiction and then the community surrounding it.
Yeah.
Who would I talk to? Like my sister? Like,
Yeah, it's like an echo chamber almost, isn't it? But it's you can be, nobody knows you're a cat on the internet. You can say things that are never going to get back to you in real life and find things out. I will say, I'm pretty sure my insistence on writing explicit kinky gay porn is not doing shit for my marriage, but I don't know.
Sure? I don't know. I mean, do you know that? Like, do you know that for a fact? Because there's so much of the intimate, like you used the word intimacy so many times earlier. And I think that it doesn't matter in what form. I think that there's still that element of intimacy, connection, and awareness and agency. It's always going to be there. It doesn't matter if it's two men or two women or, a man and a woman or somebody's non-binary. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't think.
No, that is true. I think he'd prefer it if I didn't write as much. But that all that to say, he is endlessly supportive of me, and I'm sure he knows that things that I write make their way into our personal life. And sometimes things that happen in our personal life get twisted around so they're, obscured enough and make their way back the other way as well. You change the names and the settings and the lots of it's you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I've told my husband, I'm like, you better thank Dean Winchester. Because there's some things that, I think through reading and writing and feeling more comfortable. And then too, like you're able to, it sounds so weird, but like even with, the person you're deciding to spend your life with, you still feel sometimes very hesitant about expressing different things. And that goes both ways, whether it's me or whether it's my husband, and feeling vulnerable enough to express and talk about and say, okay, well, maybe, maybe not this point, but maybe we like build up, or like, maybe we try this, or, oh, I read this. And, then he gets a little eyebrow raised. Oh, did you? And I'm like, yes, I did. And so like, like those kinds of things, like, and I think it becomes playful, and it makes it, like you said, like more accessible, so that then it breaks down that where the porn is only for the guys, like, and again, like I'm going from a really like a mentality of like, oh, this is just what guys do. This is not what, the quote unquote, like wife would do or something like that, which is just
Yeah.
total bullshit. And it's been around for decades like this. You know what I mean? Like that kind of a situation.
You know what I think is interesting about what you just said, though, and this is
Mhm.
something that I have always been vigilant about ever since I've been having sex, is that
Mhm.
you cannot look at a person and know what they do, and it's none of your fucking business.
Right.
So
Yes.
when someone decides by looking at someone what they do and what they're, first of all, why are you looking at someone and imagining what they're like in bed if you're not actually fucking them? So
Is that not
and if
like
you haven't been invited, like I just
Mhm.
don't even get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That is a massive consent issue for me, for people,
Mhm.
for anyone to even theorize and
Mhm.
say, I never would have imagined you would have been into blah, blah, blah. Well,
Yeah.
who asked you?
I guess it's going to be like this for quite a while in terms of just in general and society and stuff. But like, don't worry about what I'm doing or thinking behind the bedroom. But if you want to explore it with me and you're fine with it and you're good with just listening and talking about topics, that's great. But if you're going to judge,
Yeah.
that's when I have an issue because you don't need
Well-
to judge it, that kind of situation.
Yeah.
as
It's not, that's not for you. Yeah. That's not for you to even
Mhm.
know or be privy to. I just,
Mhm.
you weren't invited. Like I said, it's just a massive consent issue for me, for anyone to even theorize, especially out
Mhm.
loud, to be like, because I've had people do that, I
Mhm.
never would have guessed that you would be into this. And I'm like, well, who fucking asked you?
Well, it's none of your fucking business.
Like,
Yeah.
It's
As
none
someone-
it's none of your business at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about you right now. We're talking
Mhm.
about something else entirely. So I don't even know why you're even part of this conversation,
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
you want to be talking about the content of what we're
Mhm.
talking about, which is not my vagina or any other part of my body. Like, it's not
Right.
about me.
Right.
It's not about you. It's about
Yeah.
the actual topic of discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
I
think,
mean,
and that kind of brings up too that consent in general is
Mhm.
much more openly discussed in fan fiction.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a point that somebody else made. And I mean, that's a point that I make consistently. And
Mhm.
I even have a tag that says consent is sexy, because it is.
it
Yeah.
is.
Because,
Yeah.
it is sexy, and because it's important. But I think, just generally people just talk more openly about consent in fic. And my God, how does anybody think that either using either Sam or Dean, that they're not consent? Like, those two are canonically driven by consent. Like,
Mhm.
they have been violated since they were children consistently,
Mhm.
and had their choices taken from them consistently since they were children. It's in the text that they are
Mhm.
both very much consensually driven.
Mhm.
So I don't know how anybody would think that, they wouldn't be, but
Yeah.
whatever. They're not watching
Yeah.
the same show, apparently. And that doesn't have anything to do with fic. I just mean,
Right.
that's one of the reasons why they're attractive,
Mhm.
I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I don't again, like that little bit that I was they were lumping Dean into like these other characters. I'm like, I just don't get that same I just didn't get that
No.
vibe from him. Like, even right off the bat, like everything was very playful, but like, understanding there's a line. And yeah, I think a lot of it was like might have been for show, but I think you get the idea that behind the scenes there's always consent, with that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I mean, also, like Mike, my husband and I were watching, he bought me season 1 on DVD because I've never seen it on DVD. So I've never
Okay.
seen it with like the regular music or
Right.
the original music or anything.
Right.
So he bought it for me a few months ago. And so we've been kind of slowly going through season 1 just to see what the music was and stuff. And we were watching Wendigo.
Mhm.
And there's the part where he says, this is probably the most honest I've ever been with a woman ever.
Mhm.
So to Hillary or whatever her fucking name is. And what was her name?
I think it was
Hillary?
Girl in that
Hillary.
episode.
I think it
Duh.
was. I think it was Hillary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember this stuff.
I
Sandra,
don't
please.
know.
Yeah,
fucking
I
know.
can't remember. So
sounds
he's
right.
like, this is the most honest I've ever been with a woman ever. And was like, ugh, that seems like bad writing. And like my husband said that, and my husband he's not even like a Dean stan. He was just like, ugh, that's bad writing. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's just a front. Like, that's the way he talks.
Mhm.
When he's in his he's 26. He's kind of partly hitting on this girl, but also he's trying to like be self-deprecating. Like, I certainly read into it as a writer myself, but like, you certainly could brush it off as it's bad writing and it's bad characterization, but at the same time, I think that's part of his putting up shields.
Yeah.
Like saying
Yeah.
that's the most honest I've ever been with a woman ever. Like,
Yeah.
what a liar! Like, what about Cassie? What about Cassie? He was obviously then 2 episodes later, we find out that he was brutally honest with Cassie to the point where she dumped him. Like, we know that he's been honest with women before,
He's an unreliable narrator.
Yes,
completely.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh goodness. Karlee, I think you were gonna have a point, I think.
Yeah, it was no, it's fine. No, it's just like the whole concept of people being like up in your business and I would have never thought that. As someone who identifies as, like non-binary, trans, all that good gender queer stuff, it's just something that I'm just achingly familiar with now, that people want to speculate on, who we are and what we're doing. And very, very recently, well, not very recently, but recently enough, lovely Marjorie Taylor Greene or Green Taylor, whichever, the halfwit, the Republican halfwit, the blonde one. Oh no, that doesn't narrow it down.
No,
sorry,
that's
guys.
fine.
That doesn't narrow
You
it
got
down.
it, but you got it. I'm sure it's that one. I'm sure it's that one.
Yeah, y'all fucking Marjorie will do it for some people. No, but she was at oh god, whatever the fuck it is Republicans do, where they get on stage and be like, "Woo, fuck queer people, guns." I don't know what they do.
Probably just a convention of some sort. Yeah, that's all.
That's
probably
weird.
Yeah,
That's strange to me. That's not how politics are in the UK. But she had said that like trans people, non-binary people, gender non-conforming people, if they are in a bathroom that matches their presentation as opposed to, what the box on their birth certificate says, they're definitely there to sexually assault you. That is the only reason they are in that bathroom. A trans woman in the women's bathroom, she is only there to sexually assault people. Like, she doesn't need to pee. She's just there to sexually assault you. And I was like, I don't know even what to do with that anymore. It's not even saying the quiet part out loud now.
Yeah.
It's just demonizing people. So, we can't obviously, we'd like to, but we can't obviously take on the entire US government. But holding on to that consent in your personal life of being like, it's none of your fucking business what I do behind closed doors is, I really, really vibe with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck
I mean,
bitch.
that is the conversation exactly, Karlee, because it's not just about how we fuck, but like, what your genitals are also none of my business. So I don't even know how this has become an issue that continues to be discussed.
Yeah.
It seems so crass and so boundary crossing to me to be like, where you pee and how you do it is my business, because it isn't. Like, I just am so baffled.
I have like
anyone thinks that is anyone's business. I just continue to be baffled by this.
I just have one rule in the bathroom, and that, like, in a public bathroom. I mean, I have the rule in my house as well, but my children are assigned male at birth, so it's an ongoing battle. But pee in the toilet, not on the seat. That's all I fucking want. I don't care if you sit, stand, or Spider-Man up the fucking walls. In the toilet, not on the seat and the floor. And if you do get it on the seat, clean it up. But other than that, I don't give a shit. But like, what it comes down to, and it's been prevalent within the gay community for such a long time. I don't think it's being seen for what it is now, but it's the same kind of thing. Is if you meet somebody who's homophobic and you, for whatever bad luck, get on the topic of, gay people, and specifically gay men, all they ever want to talk about is how they fuck. It's never, it's because it's sexual to them. Not necessarily sexually arousing, but it's only about the sexuality side of it. They can't foresee, like the normal standard relationship things that exist in a heterosexual relationship. It's only ever about the fucking. And that's...
Which I think also brings us to another point about that, is about how fan fiction, and you can, I don't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to add in there that I think that the way sexuality is presented and expressed in fan fiction is so much more fluid and so much than what we feel comfortable or what we're allowed to do in day-to-day life. So because it becomes this constant uphill battle, you know, to be like having to explain it to people when it's none of their fucking business. So I think some of that, Karlee, is a pushback. Some of that is that sort of take back the night kind of concept of like pushing back on society. Like, you hate me, you hate what I do with my dick, you hate what I do. I'm just going to put it in your face as often as possible. So that's sort of just like an old holdover queer male behavior is like, you know, I'm just going to put it in your face, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
well,
fuck you. This is how I do it. And you're going to hear about it.
Yeah. But that's all they're fucking talking. They being, you know, any they that you want. That's all they're talking about anyway. You know, you talk to, let's make a straw man out of a cishet white man. Okay. You talk to him about gay people and it's all about how they fuck. You talk to him about gay women, lesbians. Oh, well, he wants to watch that, you know?
Yeah.
And then you get into, God forbid, you get into the realm of like trans people or non-binary people or gender non-conforming.
And then it becomes a punchline. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're just like, have you just considered worrying about your own dick? Like,
exactly.
Just worry about you, okay? Just focus on your underwear and leave everybody else alone.
No, I'm not asking you so that you'll answer that question.
Yeah, but could you just
want to make sure?
Introspection, please. But that's the kind of thing I'm seeing. Like you know, blonde fuckwit. You couldn't possibly be in the bathroom to use the bathroom. It's sexual. It has to be of a sexual nature. It has to be not only sexual, sexually aggressive. And I'm like, I just want to pee, dude. I'm not in here for anything else. I don't know what the fuck Republicans are doing in the bathrooms. It sounds grim, if you ask me. Yeah. But I would like to pee.
It also just goes back to the Puritan concept of protecting women's purity, protecting the female purity, protecting their fragility, protecting,
then sexualizing them too whenever they feel fit,
and
to
then
do that.
overly, exactly, yeah. So
you know, it's
because obviously we just walk around, I don't know, I don't know what, I don't understand Puritans.
I don't know what you're even supposed to be doing anymore. You're like use feminine and long skirts, but then that's wrong. I don't know. I find it, I mean, it's every accusation is an admission of guilt, but for all the screaming about, the trans people in the bathrooms and the drag queens and stuff, it seems to be quite a lot of church people and Republicans and they're called conservatives over here, same political right-wing mindset, that seem to keep getting arrested for rape and grooming, and I wonder why that might be, that it's never the drag queens and the trans
definitely
people.
Indicative of where their minds are. So,
that's
obviously if they think that way, everyone must think that way.
Yeah, of course. There's a conservative, which is that's the like our Republican Party basically. That's literally, and he's like old as fuck, by the way. Like, we're not even talking about a young guy. He's like old, who's just been arrested for raping a woman. And I'm like, oh, what is happening? What? And I would bet all the money in my purse that he gets a slap on the wrist and just moves on with his life.
Yeah.
Probably still be an MP. Probably won't even lose his job. Just, don't do that. And
I guess it's just this inability to be able to understand that people are made up of lots of different levels and aspects, and sexuality is just one part of the puzzle,
right?
And people should be allowed to explore that. And if it's exploring it within a community that's accepting of exploring and reading and writing and talking and all these things, that's great. If that doesn't fit your mindset, then by all means, don't go after
don't partake.
Don't come into our spaces.
Then say things about it. Because that's, I think, what's the most frustrating too about it, is that it's you might feel safe, but then you get this outside influence that finds it and then has to feed off of it. And then it's like, okay, well, now I can't feel as comfortable. Like, maybe like talking with like-minded individuals, because there's always that outside outside part, that outside influence that wants to just make everybody just walk around like the Handmaid's Tale's going on, which is just freaking like my husband won't even like watch it because I'm like, well, it's kind of like
No,
just
I won't
happening,
either.
you know, because it's like
No.
it's unfortunately it's what's happening today with the whole like take everything away from someone, including their ability to be free with their sexuality. And again, like I think people think free with sexuality, and that means everybody's just humping like rabbits. And that's not what that is. Sexuality has all these spectrums. I mean, you can identify all different ways and, you know, want to explore things. And it doesn't mean that. But if you're doing that, fine. That's your business. Do it. But then understand not everybody falls under that umbrella, but it's because of what your very limited understanding of sex is, I think. And I think it all goes back to society and how it's just, we only want to show this one thing and everything else is bad, aside from what we consider to be appropriate or what's like whatever MTG is talking about now in terms of, but it's scary. It's scary over here. It's scary everywhere, but it just feels like it's getting harder, you know, instead of getting easier to feel like you can find your own place and fit in. And that involves, you know, I think sexuality as well. It's just sad. It's just sad about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I got us on a downer, but let's see if we can get it back up again. Oh man. All righty.
That was my fault. I dragged us into the real world.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's all good. It's all good. It's what the tangential conversations happen. And that's always good stuff. I was curious about like and it's not quite sexual agency, but I was kind of looking more about stereotypes of fanfic writers and how like supernatural I feel.
Dreaded word.
How supernatural I feel is kind of, I think, changed its approach to it a little bit. But like in the very beginning, and Karlee, one of these articles states Becky's like highlighted in one of these articles, like big time about the fan fiction and like how fanfic was sort of like represented in Supernatural by Becky and how that ended up changing. I think even in terms of like fan fiction, and I know Karlee abhors Becky, and we all don't like Becky for many reasons. I think they tried to do a little bit of a workaround in the last
Too little,
season.
too late.
I know
too little,
season.
Too late.
I know the last season, Atomic Monsters. I think they did some kind of, you know, working around that, or like her
showing growth.
Yeah, showing growth.
Yeah, showing growth in her character. Yeah.
But what do you think, like in terms of like, I don't know, like just what some regular, like some stereotypes might be of like fanfic writers, or why is fan fiction out of all the different creative expressions in fandom still not quite looked at the same way as say fan art or different things like that? Because it kind of pisses me off, you know, like I see a lot of like people that, again, very creative and they do amazing things with fan art, but there's so many
because it's predominantly female.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
It pisses me off, though.
It's a predominantly female space, and so we've got our silly little things that we do. So my husband, this is not to like laud my husband or anything. This is just another reason why I married this man. But he's read my fan fiction before, and not because he's like, I want to read fan fiction or I super love this fandom, but because he wants to read what I've written. So he's read my fan fiction before and he's asked questions about it. So
wow.
But he doesn't think that. He doesn't think that way. Like he doesn't think that this is this silly little thing that we do. You know, I mean, he definitely recognizes that it's a hobby, probably more than a hobby. You know, he recognizes that I don't get paid for it. He recognizes that, but he knows that it's important to me. You know, he knows that it's a community. He knows that, you know, I participate as much as I possibly can, you know, as much as our lives allow me to, because it's important to me. So he's not included in this discussion, but so I wanted to give that caveat because I know a lot of writers out there whose husbands have no idea. I met a woman who's to this day one of my very close friends in the Twilight fandom. And I met her in San Diego at the San Diego Comic-Con in 2010. And by day 3, she was like, do you know my husband doesn't even know why I'm out here? He thinks I'm on a work trip.
Oh, wow. That's so sad.
And I was like, what the
Aw.
fuck, dude?
Hmm.
And so, but then by the end of the weekend, because there were so many of us, bonding that weekend, and we had a fan fiction panel that I sat on. And by the end of the weekend, she was like, I'm going to tell him when I go home. And I mean, she was on that same panel. She was on a fucking panel. Like when I was asked to be on a panel, when I was asked to be on the panel at San Diego Comic-Con, and they sent me a free fucking pass for the whole 4 days.
Wow.
And I was
I would
like,
be dead.
I'm going to scream it from the rooftops. Like, I'm not keeping that shit from anyone. Like,
No.
I'm like, I'm going to go talk about my fan fiction, porn, and I don't care who knows, like I was so excited. And I almost cried when she told me he had no idea. And I didn't tell her, like, I'm sure I reacted strongly, like, because I can't control my face, but like, I didn't like, I wasn't like, oh my God, you've got to tell him, like there were other people sitting with us who were like, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't tell him. But then there are also like other
That's not
women
helpful,
in that
though.
group are like, no, it's not. But then there were other women also sitting right there who were like, yeah, my husband doesn't know what I write or read. And I mean, it was a good portion of people. There was only like 3 of us out of 20 whose husbands knew what we read and write.
Wow.
I mean,
That's so sad.
the bulk of them had no idea. They were just like, oh, go have fun with your girlfriends kind of thing, and had no idea what they do. And I'm like, oh, my husband reads my reads my fic, so I'm just going to shut up. But I think that it is viewed that way by a lot of people, by especially a lot of
men,
cis straight men, who just think like, oh, that's that cute little thing that she does with her girlfriends. I don't really know what it is, and it's like, not important, and it's really put down and demeaned, I think.
Yeah, I think we have partners, Karlee and I, that are supportive in lots of ways for what we do with
maybe not as
maybe a little too much sometimes.
No, I was gonna say maybe not as in depth as your husband, MJ. I think mine is mostly, and maybe your husband is the same, Sandra, just a little bit bemused that this is what we've chosen to do with our lives. But
but supports it though. Like
supports it, like when you start clapping and cheering around a dog and they're like, woo, party, but they don't know what's going on. That's kind of, like just a little bit bemused, but still here for the party. They're just like, woo, yay.
Yeah.
Like
I got my husband shouting it from the rooftops. I'm like, shut up.
Ted is a little bit too infused.
My mom does too. My mom will be like, we're at like a family gathering or something, and somebody will somebody said something about their husband having a book published, and my mom's like, MJ's a writer, and I'm like,
shut up.
I don't think great Aunt Lila wants to know about my porn. Okay, I'm just gonna say.
I was when I was a teen. When I was a teen and I was writing, and I was a teen, so I had all the time in the world, but no skill or knowledge. So we won't. I wouldn't look back on it now, but I remember I was writing like this really. Mary Sue read it into fic, and I was telling my mum like, oh my God, it's getting so many hits, like so many people are reading it. She didn't know what it was. She just knew I was writing something, and I very categorically did not tell her what it was. And then she went and told like the rest of my family, including my elderly grandfather, and I was like, oh, why have you done that? Oh fuck, no. So I stopped telling her about things after that, but my husband doesn't read my fics because they make him uncomfortable apparently. Which with the amount of gay porn that I write, all right. He's heterosexual, I'm not going to force dicks on him when he doesn't want dicks, but he could not be more behind the podcast thing. A little bit amused that this is like, it's just one show. Like I don't see the appeal, but okay. A little bit amused, but still happy to be here, and he'll go and listen and like, and do all the things, share the things, and he's in there. Ted just needs to shush. little too much.
Just
a
a
little
family.
too much.
Just a family. Just
oh, do you want him to tell his work colleagues? Oh yeah, do they have Christmas do? Do you want to be? Oh, that's Ted's wife.
My husband.
And then
I will tell you, he's like he's told people like when he goes to get his infusion, I'm like, sweetie, I'm like, you gotta, I'm like, you have to vet them first, like see if like how into how into supernatural they are and how into the fandom they are before you give them that sort of information. So he's learning. Yeah. It's like I wish he would have learned it quicker.
My husband recently got a new job at public library here. Mm-hmm. And 3 of the women there are supernatural fans. And so he, and that they found out because he was like, I can't remember checking something out. And they were like, oh, you like supernatural? And he's like, well, I'm getting this for my wife. She's a big fan. And I guess like one of the women was like, okay, so this could be controversial. And he's like,
I fucking doubt it.
Pretty sure I got more than you got. And I don't even remember. She said something about like, basically it was like Sam or Dean or something dumb like that, you know? Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh yeah, that's easy. You have no idea. And I was like, you didn't like go down and he's like, well, I just said that you were really active in your fandom and like, you know, you've been on podcasts and stuff talking about it. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And that you're part of a community like blog and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, you know, I don't mind telling them, you know, it's like, obviously I don't mind, but I don't want him being like, oh, she writes fan fiction. And then here's a link, you know, like to total strangers.
Yeah, I've learned the less information I give my husband, the better sometimes, because then he can't proliferate stuff just to anybody in general, or can't just let anything fly. But yeah, he's getting better at it. He's getting
topics though that we've had conversations about, like in just general conversations, because he listened to the podcast that you know that I was on with you guys on one of our road trips last year, and he was like brought this up, and we were talking to one of our friends who's a writer, and I mean it actually was helpful, you know, to the conversation. But I was kind of like, you know, you don't really have to tell people I was on a podcast talking about fan fiction. Like, you could just be like, I was listening to a podcast.
Bless them.
Oh, they're so sweet. They're just little puppies that don't really know what's going on, but that, by God, they're just happy to fucking be here and party. I love it.
Yeah. But I think that says a lot too about how there can be support, you know, and again, this sort of like understanding that like, it's okay. Like, you know, it doesn't have to be, I mean, it's going to be taboo for some people, but it doesn't have to be taboo with your partner at the very least, because if anything, it just opens communication, you know, which I think is, I think it's been really helpful for me. And I mean, to say that as somebody who's turning 50, you know, God, in a couple months, like, I feel like I'm at least, you know, I'm still learning, and I'm still learning more about myself. And a lot of that has to do, you know, with fan fiction. And I think that's important.
Well, I love that he's been able to, like, he's read stuff before and he'll say, do you like that? You know, like, is that something you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it just kind of came up in the story. Like, you know what I mean? Or like, I mean, no, I've already tried that. I'm not super into it, but it seemed to fit the moment. Like, so I wrote it down. Like, it doesn't mean that I expect you to do that. Like,
that's nice though. It's nice that he's wanting to ask.
Yes, exactly. It is. Yeah. And I like that, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, well, that's good. I see.
That's nice.
There's a lot of good things that come out of fan fiction. People just have to give it a chance and be okay with it.
I think, you know, it is one of my like unending bugbears that one of the things that brought fan fiction into mainstream media was 50 Shades of fucking Grey, because you know that the hype that inspired, and I was like, but it's awful. Why? And I just think there's so many better things out there that could have brought it into the mainstream. And that's one of my main problems. Well, it's not my main problem with Becky, but again, that's what is the first thing that we see of, you know, like the first
she's
impression.
All over Sam. She's all over Sam.
And that's the first impression that the show itself gives to fanfic people in the fandom that they're gross and they not that she's gross, but like she oversteps and she behaves in a gross manner. And then let's not fucking talk about time for a wedding. Let's just what?
Well, that doesn't really have anything to do with fan fiction, but yes, I know, because she's the character.
Yeah.
Somehow made her into a rapist.
It's this weird.
But my kind of issue with that is that we've already established that she's the poster child for like nerdy girls on the internet that write porn, and we've already established that that's who she is. And then we see her, not being a rapist, but
not practicing consent.
it's not that far down the line, is all I will say. And I maintain to this day, if that episode had been gender reversed, the show would have been cancelled 100%. It would not have made it past that episode. And that, it just ties those things together. Like, we've got like creepy overstepping boundaries fanfic, girl nerd, and then she manifests into a fucking like date rape. And then suddenly we get one episode that's gonna make it a no. Fuck that bitch. I hate her so much. Just don't even get me started.
Well, bitch. I think a lot of it too is that
I think you've already started.
I'm way down the path now. Going,
starting.
No, but I hate her.
But I think it misses the important part of fan fiction being that there's really this respect and love for the characters that I think is sort of like missing with Becky. And I think they sort of, with fan fiction, that episode, I think that's, I know you don't like it, but you don't like it because people sing in it. You said it gets cringy and you just don't like that aspect of it. But I mean, in terms of like the relationship that I think even Dean gets with like the writer, the creator of the play, like it's very, she brings about an understanding, I think, for him, and the relationship that a lot of fans have with the characters that they feel very careful with and they want to express and show and like show off and say, look how great they are. Look at all the one, like look at the single man tier. I love that. So, that whole little performance is just like so great because it just shows all the wonderful things about a character that this writer feels. And that's missing, I think, in that stereotypical, they just want to see the brothers, like with Becky, it's like they just want to see the brothers together. Like they're but there's there's relationships, there's character building, there's emotion, there's all of this stuff that fan fiction does, good fan fiction does, that I think people just don't understand unless they're in the fandom that way too. Which is, I guess, shame for them. They just don't get to enjoy that as much, as people who write fan fiction do.
I think that, it's always a conversation that can be discussed because everyone has a different perspective on that. I think that's the most important part of, sexual agency in life, but in fiction, is that it just is, there's endless possibilities and endless facets. So
I'm putting everybody on the spot today. Is there one fic that you feel, MJ, too, that maybe like you think sort of represents, not necessarily you per se, but like maybe just even with the character or something, or just like is a good example of sexual agency, if you can think of one? Because I know you say consent.
But you won't like it.
For what? For yours, Karlee?
Well, I assumed that you were going to put
I am
going
to ask you too, but I mean, if MJ needs time to think about it, I can ask you, Karlee.
I mean, I think that I'll name a couple of things actually. There Must Be a Lock has a fic that I can't remember. I think it's called If You Have to Ask. I can't remember.
Oh, I did that one. All that I ask?
All That I Ask. All That I Ask.
Yeah.
Which I think is, just a really, is a processing of past trauma.
There's definitely a lot of communication in there too. Yeah. When they're talking about it. Yeah. And I think this is very laborious, and it's no longer, I don't have it on, it's not on Tumblr anymore. The J2 times original character bottle service and full service that I wrote, I think there's so much agency
and growth and conversation in that.
And figuring out boundaries and different things like that. And then
yeah.
Yeah.
And the difference between, I think the thing for me when I was writing that was the difference between these are the things that turn me on and probably get me off. And these are the things that I incorporate into my intimate relationships. So there's that difference. And that was a lesson for the female character, the original female character in that series, those two series, was that these are things that I've done. These are things that I enjoy, but these are not things that I enjoy with the men that I love. And there's a difference. And so, and then why is that? Why does, what does that look, what is that? Why is that way? And so that was something that I explored with that. But I think almost everything I write is consent based, you know, and then also kind of like deep is another one where the reader, I think it's reader, I can't remember, is, you know, not super experienced, and she's like really into Dean, and you know, he's really just like, well, we don't have to do this, we could do this instead, you know. And it's like constant conversation, constantly talking and exploring and touching, and you know, and she's just so jazzed that she just wants to do it, but at the same time he's kind of like, let's just feel, let's just glide, you know, let's just like roll with the punches and see how
like
everything
be in the moment and actually like take the time. And just enjoy it, enjoy each other, and you know. And that was so fun to write too, because it was a young Dean in my head. And it was kind of one of those things where it's like Crazy on You is another one like that, where it's just like he just wants to blow off some steam and to feel good for a little bit, because his life sucks, you know. And so it's like, that's all, you know, he just wants to find a pretty girl and make her feel good and feel good himself, you know.
Yeah.
Oh,
I get that.
Or guy, whatever.
Okay, Karlee, what am I not gonna be happy with you when you
okay,
tell
so
me?
I have two, and they slant differently. Well, one of them slants differently to MJ's. So one of mine is Double Booked by BJ Durali Starscream. Just because even though it's, I mean, not even though, but it's very kinky, and it's very, you know, there doesn't appear to be a lot of boundaries in each scene, but when you sort of, you know, when you put it all together and you can see all of the, you know, the time and the energy and the, you know, the feeling that has gone into the relationship between the female character and Sam and Dean, and, you know, all together, if you just looked at it on the surface, you'd just be like, well, it's just a kinky story. But underneath, there's so much more that I think really, really encapsulates sort of, you know, sexual agency and consent and all that good stuff. So that would be one
absolutely.
of mine. And the other one would be Factory Reset. Sorry, Sandra. I've brought this up so many times for so many different things, because by Christ, it's perfect. It's perfect.
I'm so obsessed. Yeah.
It's just, you know, there's nobody's pushy and nobody's, you know, and I think because you take the time in that fic to treat the moment with the, you know, the reverence that it deserves, it makes it that much more powerful, you know, that like right down to the starting line, Dean is still able, you know, she's still saying like, you know, we don't have to do this, we can stop, you know, it's fine. And you know from the beginning the journey that Dean has taken to get to that point with her. It's perfection. I just love it so much. I'm going to nominate it for all the awards. We need fanfic awards, and I'm going to nominate it for all of them.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting that.
I love it.
I did that to you for something else recently as well, didn't I? I can't remember what it was. You asked me to pick something, and I was like, Factory Reset. That's the one.
Aww.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it was.
Well, I think that's why
that's
why I think I'm feeling more proud of that every time. Like, you know, we just had a discussion and we were like, you know, what's something that you're proud of. And I think that's one that I'm really just,
You should be.
I really love that one. I really love that
should
one.
be. You should
Yeah.
be. It's perfection. See, now you're stuck now because you can't turn around and say junkies, because that is the antithesis of what we're talking
Okay,
about.
so I can say that, Karlee, for you, when I had to like,
Oh no, you don't have to pick one of mine.
no, but I am, because I feel like need for you, for me, being able to communicate that the level that the two characters have with each other, knowing that, and then being okay with each other to express that and to go and give the person what they need and be present. I really, it was one of the first fics that I ever had to like narrate, and it's just really great. It's a great story about communication there's no words needed for it too. You know what I mean? But they still understand boundaries. And I think that's so important. I think, MJ was talking about boundaries too, like just being able to know the person well enough and feel comfortable enough and safe enough to know there may be boundaries there, but that person's going to be there to help you through that. I think that's what a part of it is too for me. It's just the boundary part of it and the safety.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
MJ, I was thinking about, and it's more like a fun one, but I feel like it still has that part of it was kind of like +1, because I know you're doing like more stories to it, but I kind of feel like +1
The
really
wedding
gives,
one.
Yeah, the wedding one.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's so much learning in such a short amount of time, between what the two characters kind of want and need, and they're able to express it very openly with each other. And I kind of just love that about that story. And she doesn't feel, I guess, as shamed about telling him, kind of maybe like what she wants. And again, I don't know what it is about the characters in and of themselves and of what projection it is too, but just like the safety that the characters give us to feel like it's okay to just tell them what you want, and to know that they're probably going to find a way to deliver it, or they may like say like, well, maybe we should try something else, or maybe we should do this, or maybe we should do that, or I want to make sure you're taken care of. It's that communication part that's just really great. I really like. I've reread that one because you're doing the black tie optional stuff, so I reread that one recently. And
you're gonna love the next chapter.
Good.
Because we had this conversation in our Slack group, and I said, this is going to be the last chapter with these two, at least for a while. And so, she says in the first story, like, you can do anything you want, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've just given me so much, like, you can do anything you want, I'll do anything you want, whatever. And so Brianna, who is my pre-reader and focus puller and all around, wonderful support system for me, was like, yeah, but hasn't he heard that before? Like, who doesn't say that to him? So what if she turns it around and she gives him something instead? So like, I've been kind of sitting on this for a while, but I think I told you though, Sandra, like a couple weeks ago, I told you that after that conversation and after I read Factory Reset, I was like, and it's not going to be pegging, just so you're clear. She's not pulling out a strap on in the middle of the weekend.
We can make it a quadruplet. A quadruplet.
Yeah, it's a trilogy now. Let's make it a quadruplet. A quartet. That's the word.
Very much like I was very much like just taking care of him, and like giving him something for, it's so you'll see how it kind of all rolls out. But like,
yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. I haven't read that black tie optional because I like to read things when they're done, because I binge them.
Yeah, I'm gonna hopefully, I've got the document open right now, and I'm hoping to finish it, at least get the draft done and over to Brianna and Stu today.
Okay.
So that I can get it posted and get it done. But
good. Yeah, I mean, I think
I'm
it's
excited.
I think it says so much about like how much we get from the characters, but then what we want to do for them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it doesn't make sense, but it's like just wanting to make sure that their needs are met too. And whatever, like, and being able to talk about that. I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I love that. Like, I love that. Like, Brianna was like, oh, you always take such good care of Dean. And I'm like, thank you, because that's what I really want to do.
Yeah, I remember when people used to say that to me. You always take such good care of Sam and Dean, and now I'm like, I'm really sorry.
Aw. No, but you're gonna fix it. You're gonna fix it, Karlee.
Yeah, I am. I'm gonna have to fix it because then I'll stop bringing it up in fucking podcasts.
Oh no, gosh, no. But this was no. I thank you. Karlee, I was just like, I was over the moon because MJ was like, oh my God, factory reset. Oh my God, factory reset. I was just like, I mean, I was so excited
I was like
when
stalking her on every platform. I was like, where is she?
To be fair, and you know, I hold love for Some Sunny Day and Past Due and this epic that you're writing at the moment.
I know, watch this eventually get done.
But I would put my name to Factory Reset being one of the best things you've ever written. Genuinely, it is that fucking good, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
No,
yeah.
Thank you. I do like that very much. I will say that, you know, it was fun. It was fun. It was quick, and Karlee was there, like in the docs and stuff, like, you know, telling me all the things that they loved about it, and like, yes, more of this and this and this, and it's just it was one of those, I think, that happened really easy, and I don't know why, but it just did. I wish I had more of those, but it happened really easy and really quick. And
I love that feeling though, because then you can always revisit that too. You can kind of like go back and read it yourself and be like, oh, this was so good.
Well, yeah, especially like when we write, like, especially when we like go back, it's been time and we go back and like, not everything that, you know, we're not going to say we're the best writers in all the world, but sometimes you write something and then you read it and you're like, when did that come out of my head? And oh my God, that's like, that's actually really good. Like that actually like even made me like stop and go, no, I never wrote that. That's not something, you know? And it's like, but you know, when you get those moments, it just makes you feel like, and then to hear it from people and get comments and stuff like that. It just, again, I think that's why it's so lovely to have this community, because a lot of writers outside of this don't experience that. They just don't know what that's like to have people in their corner as they're writing. So that's special. That's special.
Yeah.
The community in general. Oh, well,
I still need to have the time, take the time to go through and just review every chapter on.
Oh, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that.
AO3,
I'm waiting for that because you told me you're gonna highlight lines and everything, and I'm just like, I'm waiting.
I'm like,
MJ, I want to thank you for all the ways you took to make it to the podcast.
Yes, thank you very much.
You've been so sweet. I'm just glad you got here safe, because I was really worried. I'm like, oh, please don't please don't like hurt yourself.
I was like
trying to get here.
I was also just trying to drive as quickly as possible because it's still impending, really.
Yeah.
I mean, like you could see the picture that I sent you. You could see the clouds, you know, the low hanging clouds and stuff. And it's still like, it's snowing right now, but it's not dumping the way it's supposed to tonight. Good. And I was like, I don't know when it's going to come, man. I don't know if it's going to come at noon. I don't know if it's going to come at 2. I don't know if it's going to come at 10. Like, you know, so I was just like, I just got to get home. So I was trying to rush. And then you were like, please be safe.
Yeah.
I have to meet you at some point. You can't get into an accident on the way to try to record a podcast. That's going to completely obliterate any plans. So don't do that. Don't do that. No, but it's been, I have to say too, like, I'm so glad that we've been able to connect, you know, on a level where we could just every once in a while just catch up, chat on Discord. And you've been great. It's lovely when you get to meet somebody that you consider quote unquote a hero and they're not an asshole. So I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And I try not to be an asshole, but sometimes
that's fine.
Comes out, but probably not in the way that you're talking about.
No, not the way I'm talking about.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us, MJ. Speak to you soon.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. It was a good conversation. It went on tangents, but good tangents. And yeah, thanks to MJ for coming on and talking all about sexual agency and fan fiction. I think it was a good discussion. Good discussion.
Yeah. I think it's worth revisiting these topics with different people, because as she said, you know, everyone's going to have a different story, a different journey, a different take on it. So
I'd love to throw
just-
that out occasionally, like with different people that we interview from now on. I think that could be like a great question to kind of put in there. So this kind of
chatty. Yeah.
This laid the groundwork. Let us know your thoughts about sexual agency and fan fiction. If you want to reach out to us, you can email us at idlingintheimpala@gmail.com. You can comment on Spotify and use the Q&A section to share your thoughts. All our contact details are on our website, idlingintheimpala.com. Go check it out.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, follow, and subscribe wherever you access your podcast. But especially if you are watching or listening on YouTube, likes, comments, and subscriptions really help us with the YouTube algorithm. All hail its benevolence. In the description, check out the causes that we are championing. There are charities in there. The holidays are coming up, and they're not always friendly to our LGBTQ plus family. So there are charities out there that you can reach out to if you need help. It's always election season in the US, it seems like. So, there's information and things in there to arm yourself, keep yourself informed. I've no doubt some fuckery will be going on in the next few months as y'all ramp up for the presidential elections next year. No. And I'm going to keep shouting it out because they're new, but also because it's important. We are championing both World Central Kitchen and Doctors Without Borders. Both charities are on the ground in the Ukraine and in Gaza, helping out as much as they can people that are, still affected by Russia's unlawful invasion of the Ukraine, which seems to have dipped back down in the media, but it is still ongoing. And of course, the, I suppose, worst now conflict in the Middle East, the war between Israel and Hamas. And we're not asking you to pick a side on either of those things. We just want to remind you that there are people in both of those places, innocent people that are trapped and are dying, and they didn't ask for war. They don't want it. And we want to help support them any way we can. So if you need any of those resources, that's what they are there for. And if you can help them keep helping others, I can't speak, that would be amazing. And with that, we will say thank you for joining us in the backseat, and we will see you next time. Bye bye, guys.
Bye.